Here's how I use Adobe Firefly, the sponsor of today's video, as a thinking tool, not as a design tool. And today we're looking at creating a new kind of like t-shirt design concept, and also thinking about kind of like what that photo shoot might look like. I'm going to do all of that inside of Adobe Firefly. Let's dive in and take a look. Now I'm starting off from a Firefly board that I started creating a few days ago, where we were kind of like remixing these kind of like 3 images, and we came up with a few new designs, and these are some of the ones that I liked the most. Now, in order to do this as a t-shirt design, what I've kind of like pulled together are some images from the Adobe stock library, and I'm going to use those to kind of like remix a little bit more when it comes to kind of like thinking about what this photo shoot might look like. And also I've got a blank t-shirt here to be able to put my design on that t-shirt. Now, one of the fun things about the Adobe Firefly boards is that you can actually select multiple images and ask it to remix that. And that's exactly what I've done here, is I've selected a few different images and then come up to the remix option. And then that gives you several kind of like options that you can then add to a board. And that's what we've come up with here, is these are a few different kind of like remix options, because I'm kind of like thinking like, is there a different style or look that I can come up with for this t-shirt design? And I want to have someone that's kind of like snowboarding down a mountain in some way on this t-shirt design. What I liked was I really liked kind of like these ones here. And then I kind of like started playing about with the option of kind of like, well, I don't want a photograph on a t-shirt. I want to be able to simplify that. And what I've ended up doing then is come down to generate image. And I then asked it to kind of like, I selected a couple of reference images, which were these 2 images here. And then I asked it to create a simple kind of like vector style image of this person, with the main focus being on the snowboarding. And that's where this image kind of like came out. And now I'm kind of like starting to think, I really like this image, but it's still not quite right. There's still something extra there that I want to kind of like change on this. And this is where I kind of like started thinking, what else can I kind of like add to this image to make it a little bit kind of like different, to kind of like add it to a t-shirt design. And I was thinking kind of like we've got the snow up there, but if you put that on a white t-shirt, then that would kind of like get lost. And that's where I thought about the concept of kind of like adding butterflies in, as kind of like to show the kind of like energy of the person flowing down the snowboard, or flowing down the mountain on the snowboard. And moving around the board, this is where I kind of like started putting these designs on and kind of like asking it to create some kind of like swirl effect showing the butterflies. And I really liked this design here. This one was really good. This is the one that stood out. And again, we could select these images and we could actually remix to kind of like see if there was anything else in here that kind of like stood out. And again, this isn't about creating a finished design. This is about kind of like thinking about what the design might look like, or once we start wanting to create the design on a t-shirt, what it might look like. But the one that stood out for me is this one here. This is kind of like the swirl of the butterflies. Kind of like, for me, it really gave that energy, and I really liked that. So now we've got a kind of like an idea of the design that I want to have a look at. But what I need to know is, what's this going to look like on a t-shirt? Now we're going to create a quick mock-up inside of Adobe Firefly. And all we do is we come over, and we've got our 2 images here. We've got our t-shirt and we've got our design. And we're going to come over to generate image, and then you can see here what we've got is we can actually choose in Gemini 3 or Nano Banana Pro as our option here. We can then choose our image here of the t-shirt and also then of our design. And then we're asking or creating a prompt that just simply says, create a mock-up showing the design on a t-shirt. And that's exactly what it's done here. We've actually got our t-shirt here in a mock-up. And I really like this design. I kind of like thinking that, you know, there's a couple of other options that I might want to explore on that, and we will do that in a few moments. But this one, I kind of like thought, well, what's this going to look like when it's actually on? And you can see here, I've actually got this on. Now, the way to do this is actually use the virtual try-on option here. And this is under the presets. So if you could click on virtual try-on, and then we click on the subject. So clicking on the subject, this is a image of me that I took last year. And then we want the clothing. So this is the t-shirt here. and then we click on generate. And that's then the image that we are getting here. This is the image of me wearing that t-shirt of that design that we just created a few moments ago. And again, this is all kind of like building concepts. This isn't kind of like going to market or using this option. These are all kind of like just, is this a good design? Is it going to look good as a t-shirt, or is it going to be kind of like something that we don't really like the look of? And then I thought to myself, well, actually what I want to do is actually remove the background on this. So I said to it, I said, remove the scene and keep the snowboard and the butterflies. Because I kind of like thought, well, I like the fact that it's got all of the scene on there. That's really cool. But I kind of like wasn't totally sure about that. And that again then is where we come up, and I created another mock-up of this. This is done exactly the same way as we did a few moments ago, where we're using Gemini 3 or Nano Banana Pro, and we're using the prompts saying create a mock-up showing the design on the t-shirt, and that's exactly what it's done here. And then again on this one we use the virtual try-on. If I click on load on this, it loads the full prompt, but instead we can click on virtual try-on, and that's where it kind of like has the prompt in the background. If we want to see the full prompt, that's what you were seeing a second ago, we can click on view prompts here, and we can then choose to select our subject, and this time we want our different clothing, and this is the one we're choosing this time. We click generate, and that's then where it adds that one now with the different, or with the removed background, to our design here inside of Adobe Firefly. And then I thought kind of like, what might this look like as a photo shoot? I thought, well, before anyone would want to go to kind of like start doing a photo shoot, we want to kind of like have a look and a feel and test out a couple of different ideas. And that's what this is going to allow us to do inside of Adobe Firefly, is come up with a couple of ideas before we actually start approaching our photographer or something like that. We can actually come up with some ideas. So under presets, I've chosen to go with the Y2K option and kind of think like, well, what's this kind of like, maybe we want a kind of like retro look or feel. And it came up with this image first, and then I thought, well, that's not got our t-shirt on it. So all I've done is on this one is I clicked on load, again using Gemini 3. I said show the person in image 1 in image 2, keeping the same t-shirt on. So I'm kind of like telling the system, I want this image, but I want the t-shirt on there. Okay, so that's what that's done, is it's actually got my t-shirt on there. And I know you can't see it on this particular occasion, but kind of like I started then playing about with kind of like different options. We created an actual video here of kind of like what it might look like, and then we kind of came up with a couple of other options here. So if I click on load, I said generate a series of 6 images where the person changes poses, including standing up in a couple. Okay, and that's where we've kind of like got this option here of these Y2K kind of like look and feel. Maybe that's something we wanted to kind of like go down the route of. But then I thought, well, actually, the other one was really nice where we were standing in the field. So we've taken the image, and again, we've got a couple of different prompts here where if I click load, so generate 6 different angles orbiting this person, keeping the full person in frame. So we've got that there, kind of like thinking like what this might look like, whether this is something would look good kind of like as a product demo. And then I thought, well, maybe we want something where we want to kind of have a bit more of a kind of like an evening look where it's kind of like that warm glow of sun. So I said create a professional looking photo shoot image with a shallow depth of field where the person showing full length will create a warm summer evening glow and to the feel of the image. And there's a couple of spelling mistakes in there, but that didn't matter for this because I could then create this kind of like look and feel of me being in the field. And then I went a little bit off script. I thought maybe I want to kind of like look a little bit more street, and I said create a professional looking photo shoot image with a shallow depth of field, show me full length. The person should be in a, should say grungy looking street with a neon pink and blue lights, and it's nighttime and there's reflections on the street. And then that's exactly what that's done. And then with this one, I wanted to kind of like ask it to create a few different poses. So again, all we've done is used a reference image of this one here, and we said change the pose of the person to be a little bit more street looking. Click on generate a few times, and then that's given us a few different poses that we might kind of like think, well, are these poses that we want to kind of like show off our kind of like our product or something else like that. And that's then how we can go from creating a t-shirt design to a photo shoot design inside of Adobe Firefly. Absolutely loving this tool for ideation. If you've got an idea or something else like that that you want to play about with, try Adobe Firefly. I'll put a link to that down in the description for you where you can try this out for yourself. And if you've got any questions, drop them down in the comments. And until next time, thank you very much and bye for now.